Hello, everybody. Awuor, you couldn't hear anything because there was nothing to hear yet. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dugan Fraser. I am the Program Manager of the Global Evaluation Initiative. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this African launch of the Glocal Evaluation Week. We're doing these regional launches for the first time this year, and I have to say they have been absolutely fantastic and completely compelling. I just want to take a moment to remind you about the Global Evaluation Initiative, what it is and what we do. We are a coalition and network of organizations. We work to strengthen monitoring and evaluation capacity all over the developing world. We work through our network of CLEAR centers. We have 2 based in Africa and a 3rd that works in Africa. CLEAR AA in Johannesburg, CLEAR FA in Dakar, and CLEAR Lab in Sao Paulo, working in Lusophone Africa. We also run the Better Evaluation website, and we're the host of every year the fantastic Glocal Evaluation Week. We also work with ANAP in Canada, who work with us to deliver amazing training content. And of course, our star product is the IPDET training course running out of Switzerland, but also with a regional delivery in Nairobi this year. The conversation we're about to have today is going to be facilitated and moderated by somebody very special. Her name is Soraya Hassan. She has a PhD in economics. She is the regional evaluation advisor in UNICEF. She works in Western and Central Africa. She's based in Dakar. She's had a long career at UNICEF, and before that, she was an academic at the University of Djibouti. Soraya, we're in good hands. I'm very pleased to welcome you. Over to you, and thank you very much.
So hello, everyone. Great to see you all. Welcome to this very important and very exciting learning journey today. And so let me start, first of all, by saying, dear colleagues from the evaluation community, esteemed panel members, I would say good afternoon or good morning or even good evening, depending on where you are joining. So I'm very, very much delighted, and it's a privilege for me to be here with you today. And at this very specific webinar that is marking the launching of the Glocal 25 in Africa. So very much delighted, and I would like to thank you all. And in particular, I would say the panelists, and that will be sharing, their very important insights. So let me start by, first of all, reminding some, do you see my screen first?
Yes, we can see your screen. If you can just put it in presentation mode.
Yes, thank you so much.
Perfect.
Quickly. Okay. So let me first start by maybe reminding some elements related to the overall context that is very useful for our webinar. Africa, as we know, all of us, I think, stands at very critical crossroads. And we have seen that the past decades has been showcased very important economic growth and remarkable resilience. And based on the IFDB, for instance, recent statistics and data, we can see that Africa is projected, for instance, to host 12 of the world's fastest growing economy, which is very important. Africa is also having a very dynamic private sector, and in particular in the context of the continental free trade area. With a lot of groundbreaking innovation from fintech to agribusiness, but also a vibrant startup ecosystem, in addition to entrepreneurial force from the women, but also from young people. So these are very important elements that is important for all of us to keep in mind. On the other hand, and I would like also to emphasize, when it comes to the human capital development area, and knowing that Africa is a really youngest continent in the world, with children, for instance, the under 18 representing 46%, and the young people under 25 representing over 60% of its population. And in this particular area, we have seen as well what we can consider historic gains in the area, for instance, of child survival and development. This is very important, area where we need you, I think, to reflect on. Just to give you an idea, over the last decades, between 2000 and 2022, when we look at the under 5 mortality, which is a very important indicator reflecting, I would say, the quality of the development, we see that Africa, made a very important progress with 53%, of decrease of this under 5. We have seen also much more interesting, good progress, for instance, in the area of safely managed water services, birth registration, stunting, so a lot of important progress. But beyond that, we are also seeing that other data are showing that in area like, for instance, in education, in area like, for instance, in skillings, and the question of the out of school, we are seeing a lot of challenges that are remaining. And in particular, I will say even disparities and inequalities. So therefore, it's important, to acknowledge these remaining challenges. And when we see, for instance, the persistence of fragility, poverty, and that shows that finally the economic growth in Africa has yet to be transformed into concrete, structural transformation and concrete, impact in changing the life of its population. It's the life of its useful population. This is very important. So today we are very much excited, and I am very happy to be with you moderating this very, I will say, important webinar to discuss the evaluation of, on the topic of that has been selected. It's quite timely, and to what extent so the evaluative evidence can really be, can mobilize in order, to act on the development process. So our conversation will be guided by some questions that I am, putting here. And we are going to explore, for instance, to what extent evaluation can help us to address the challenges, the remaining challenges when it comes to the inequality, political, social stability, but also the economic difficulties. And to what extent as well, evaluation also can be mobilized and, and leverage, to really explore how the locally grounded, I will say, pathway or local solutions towards more inclusive and evidence-based governance in Africa. And I will add as well to what extent, the evaluative evidence that we use to produce will be also, could help us, to accelerate development and build a human capital that, accompany the transformation of the continent. So without further ado, we are very much delighted today to have a very important panelist, and I would like you to introduce our panelists. So I would like to start, and we're privileged to have Monsieur Antonin Dossou, ancien ministre de l'évaluation des politiques publiques en Bénin. Je voudrais l'accueillir. So welcome. And we are also very fortunate to count on the participation of Tsikedo, monitoring and evaluation specialist from Clear Anglophone Africa. She will be, presenting and discussing the evaluation in governance and putting an emphasis on the strengthening of national capacity and national systems. We are also having today, and welcome, Dr. Jean Providence, who is the head of evaluation at the WFP. And the focus of his presentation will be on evaluation in food security and social inclusion. Last but not least, we are also privileged to have Dr. Awuor Ponge from Vice President of AFREA. And that will be also who will be discussing the professionalization of the evaluation and to achieve sustainable development goals in Africa. So I would like to welcome all and thank you very much in advance for your time and the time you created to be with us today. So without further ado, and I would like to remind some logistics. Interpretation is available, so please use the relevant button, and we will be having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So, Monsieur le Ministre, je pense que la parole est à vous. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Cher Soraya,
Dear Soraya,
c'est avec
it's with.
grand plaisir que je vous retrouve.
It is a great pleasure that I see you again.
Nous avons été ensemble quelques années au Bénin.
We were together for a few years in Benin.
Tout ce que je vais dire par rapport au Bénin. Et ça va être vraiment avec grand plaisir que je
So you already know everything I'm going to say about Benin, and it's going to be really with great pleasure that I am participating in this launch webinar. No,
l'évaluation des politiques publiques en Afrique est essentielle.
the evaluation of public policies in Africa is essential. And I'm convinced that
Qui nous permettra réellement
it is this that will really allow us
de mieux mettre en valeur le potentiel de l'Afrique,
to better develop Africa's potential,
bien prendre en charge les défis économiques auxquels le continent est confronté.
and to take charge of the economic challenges facing the continent. I am particularly convinced of this, and I would like to convince you of this, based on the experience of Benin. So I'm really going to
concentrer mon propos, je sais que j'ai juste 10 minutes. Je vais
concentrate my remarks. I know I only have 10 minutes. I will focus my remarks on the experience of Benin,
grâce à l'évaluation des politiques
and to demonstrate to you that thanks to the evaluation of public policies,
qualitatifs importants.
it is possible for us to make important quality improvements. The setting,
De l'évaluation des politiques publiques au Bénin,
from the evaluation of public policies to the Bel Air,
de façon fulgurante et
to progress, I would say in a dazzling way, and
d'y avoir contribué.
I am proud to have contributed to this,
Mais l'histoire se poursuit.
at least at the beginning. But the story continues. I'll show you why. But at the beginning, we started from scratch. We started from scratch. In 2007,
Le ministère
the Ministry
de la prospective, du développement et de l'évaluation de l'action publique a été créé.
Foresight, Development and Evaluation of Public Action has been created.
J'étais le directeur de cabinet du ministre.
And I assure you that there was nothing at the time. I was the minister's chief of staff. And we had to take stock, to ask us,
Pour trouver la bonne façon de prendre en charge la mission.
to find the right way to take charge of the mission.
Je pourrais répondre aux questions. Mais
I
ce qui
will
est
spare you
important
all the
à
details.
noter, c'est que nous avions
I will be able to answer your questions.
en matière de ressources humaines.
But what is important to note is that we had a serious deficit in terms of human resources, an evaluation sector, a very serious deficit, a very large deficit.
Institutionnel de l'évaluation
In terms of institutional resources, evaluation,
en matière de ressources financières de l'évaluation.
and there is also a significant deficit in terms of financial resources for evaluation. Today, after a journey of nearly 18 years,
Que nous avons
I'm happy to note that we have
vraiment progressé. Je suis fier de dire que
really
le Bénin,
progress.
tout au moins en Afrique francophone, peut se considérer comme un exemple à suivre.
I am proud to say that Benin, at least in French-speaking Africa, can consider itself an example to follow. Because in terms of institutionalization, significant progress has been made.
Été noté. D'abord,
Were noted first.
j'ai eu personnellement le privilège de lancer la politique nationale de l'évaluation.
I personally had the privilege of launching the National Evaluation Policy.
C'est une politique qui définit tout le cadre.
In 2013, I was a minister, and really this. It is a policy that defines the whole case.
Au Bénin,
In front of Regis, the practice of evaluation in Benin,
création du Conseil national de l'évaluation permettant à toutes les parties prenantes
At the same time,
et c'est un conseil qui a joué
there was the creation of the National Evaluation Council to allow all stakeholders to find their way around. And it was a council that really played the role, an advisory role, to decide all the questions related to
Il
evaluation.
y a eu le guide méthodologique de conduite des évaluations pour fournir aux praticiens les différentes étapes à suivre. Donc la démarche méthodologique.
And then there was the methodological guide for conducting evaluations to provide practitioners with the different steps to follow, and therefore the methodological approach to be undertaken to conduct the evaluation. And the pinnacle? Now, I already have it more in place, but,
Ça a été la
you know, it goes on, it's like a river.
spécifique
The pinnacle was the adoption of a specific legal framework. In 2024, with the law 2020-409, Awuor's
du développement et évaluation des politiques publiques au Bénin. Donc, au Bénin, aujourd'hui, depuis 2024,
Development Planning and Evaluation of Public Policies in Benin.
traite de l'évaluation.
So in Benin today, since 2024, we have a specific law that deals with evaluation. And who says how things will be done? The law provides, for example,
Y compris le programme d'action du gouvernement,
that all the policies put in place, including the government's action program, must be subject to a midterm evaluation and a final evaluation.
elle prévoit que toute
It provides that all
intervention publique
public intervention
doit comporter un volet, une composante évaluation.
must have a component, evaluation component, and plan for its financing. Be careful.
Prévoir l'action. Il faut prévoir déjà dans le budget
It's not
prévisionnel
just about
comment
planning for
cette
action.
évaluation se
You
fait.
have to plan already in the provisional budget how this evaluation would be financed. The law states requires that the evaluation mission be conducted in a manner independent
Enfin, la loi prévoit dans le budget national
and finally to have provided in the national budget
pour que l'évaluation soit effectuée, soit réalisée, tant au niveau national qu'au niveau déconcentré, donc au niveau
resources for the evaluation to be carried out are carried out both at the national level and at the decentralized level, i.e., at the level of the municipalities. It's a progression.
et que nous avons franchi une étape essentielle.
Extraordinary, and I can consider that we have come a long way and that we have taken an essential step. The institutional resources are therefore in place.
Il y a encore des progrès à
Where there is
constater.
still progress to.
C'est au niveau des ressources financières.
Progress needs to be made in terms of financial resources.
Une
For now,
partie des ressources qui soutiennent l'évaluation proviennent encore
much of the resources that support the evaluation are still coming from development partners.
il y a, dans le contexte actuel, vous comprenez bien ce que je veux dire, nécessité de mobiliser encore
So in the current context,
interne pour la conduite.
you understand what I mean.
Donc,
There is a need to mobilize even more internal resources for the conduct of the donation evaluation, an environment conducive to the practice of evaluation in Benin.
même encore à attendre en matière de pratique effective de l'évaluation.
Progress is still to be expected in terms of effective evaluation practices and the systematic financing of evaluation. And to give you an example,
J'ai eu le privilège
guilty, I had the
de
privilege
conduire
to drive
la mission
the mission,
d'évaluation finale
final
de
evaluation,
la vision de développement Bénin 2025 à la
from the vision of development, Benin, 2025, to fever.
stratégique de développement.
It is a vision of strategy,
qui a été
of development,
adoptée en 2000 pour les 25 prochaines années, donc de 2000 à 2025.
which was adopted in 2000 for the next 25 years, so from 2000 to
Dans
2025.
la perspective de la préparation de l'élaboration
And in 2023, at the end of 2023,
parce que nous y travaillons déjà.
in the perspective of the preparation of the development of the new Benin 2060 vision, because we are already working on it, it was asked, and this was the first action to be taken, to evaluate, to carry out the final evaluation of the development vision for the year 2025. At Fever, and I had the privilege of leading this mission. We did some groundwork, some background work, and we were able to get out of the way. I could give details later if some are interested. We were able to get out. Progress noted. The axes of collection of reinforcement necessary,
Les leçons apprises,
and above all the lessons learned,
la formulation, la construction de la vision Bénin 2060.
for the formulation, the construction of the vision, Benin 2060.
L'avantage de présenter le rapport
I had the privilege of presenting the report.
à l'ensemble des institutions. Il y avait 1250 personnes à peu près.
I would say to all the institutions, there were about 1250 people.
La société civile,
The government, the parliament, civil society.
donc, avec toute cette audience,
And the more we were able to share with this whole audience, the progress that has been made,
les défis qui restent à relever. Et comme je le disais tout à l'heure, les
but
leçons
also the challenges that remain to be met.
pour la
And as I said earlier, the lessons, the elements to be taken into account for the definition of the new vision. I was mobilized to define this new vision. And I can tell you that the work is over. So we already have in any case on the technical level. And the vision? The document will be sent to the National Assembly. The Benin 2060 vision will be voted as a law. So what kind of Benin do we want? Over the next 35 years, in 2060, when the country will have experienced 100 years of independence, it is a vision that will prevail. So it is the consideration of the recommendations that we have made. It is a vision that will be imposed on all the governments that will succeed each other, knowing that the elections, the presidential election will take place every 5 years, knowing that from 2026 to 2060, we will have. That's government. Well, this vision adopted by Parliament will be imposed on all the governments that will pass. Going to pass, they will have to draw inspiration from it to elaborate, and therefore move on to the stage. Programming and developing the government's action plan. This one is the responsibility of the government that is there. And as I said, the law provides for the evaluation of the plan. And when it kills that we had 111, well, a good sequence. So basically, what I could say, I could go into more detail. I am at your disposal. What I could say is that the evaluation of public policies is an instrument, essential, to ensure relevance of his policy in the face of the challenges to be taken into account, and to ensure their effective implementation. To ensure their implementation of the Awuor workforce, we have made significant progress. There are areas for improvement, such as systematizing ex-ante evaluation. Of totally ethics, it is not yet done systematically. Improve data collection. Current data so that it is the Institute of Statistics that is responsible for doing it, in order not to be obliged to carry out an ad hoc survey every time we want to conduct an evaluation. There must be current data available. And I recognize that we still have progress to make. And then, last but not least, communication needs to be improved. And the dissemination of the results of the evaluation to avoid it being a matter of knowledge, but precisely to democratize the evaluation. In order to enable our countries to make significant progress. This is his view, what I already had to say in the introduction. And then I remain available for questions and debate. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. It's a great pleasure. Thank you for sharing Benin's rich experience on the issues and questions and answers that we will certainly come back to in the question and answer session. Without further ado, I would like to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, moderator. Good day to all. So my focus will be on how evaluations can strengthen governance and development planning, with a particular focus on building national capacities in Anglophone Africa. So evaluations is no longer just a technical exercise done at the end of a project. It is a political and strategic tool that contributes directly to governance and development planning. When used well, evaluation supports governments in making transparent, evidence-based decisions that will lead to public value, but they also help hold institutions accountable. They also help in building public trust and promoting learning. So in the planning processes, evaluations allow countries to make informed choices about priorities, about budget allocations and policy trade-offs, especially when resources are limited. So in short, evaluations is a lever for more effective governance and more responsive development planning. Now, across Anglophone Africa, many countries have made commendable progress in establishing national evaluation systems. However, we do still see common challenges that exist. These include a reliance on donor-driven evaluations that don't always align with national priorities. And also we see that institutionalization of evaluations within government structures is still at the early stages. We also see weak feedback loops between evaluation findings and decision making, and a shortage of evaluation skills within the public sector, particularly at the subnational level. We also see minimal involvement of young and emerging evaluators in national systems. But there are promising entry points we can build on to strengthen national capacities. We see a growing demand of national monitoring and evaluation policies and frameworks in countries such as Tanzania, Namibia, and Eswatini. So these are growing in terms of demand for these policies. And where evaluation is being repositioned as a core pillar of planning and governance. We also see the integration of evaluations into national development plans, which is very important because when evaluations are linked directly to priorities and visions and national development plan type frameworks, they become more influential and more sustainable. We also then see the promotion of gender responsiveness and equity-focused evaluation as being important because these approaches not only address inequalities, but also make evaluations more inclusive and relevant to the most vulnerable populations. And I think it's worth mentioning here that the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, for example, together with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in South Africa, have developed two criteria that could that outline dimensions which need to be considered in evaluations to ensure that gender responsiveness and equity-focused evaluations are being conducted. The first criteria speaks to is the transformative equity criteria. But they've also developed, criteria around climate change, which is the climate and ecosystems health criteria as well. And the dimensions that are outlined in these guidelines that are part of these criteria sort of help in terms of ensuring that equity and gender responsiveness is being incorporated into evaluations from the TOR stage to all phases of the evaluation. And we've seen in places like Uganda and South Africa and Tanzania as well, efforts to include issues of equity, for example, within the planning frameworks as well. It's also important to invest in capacity building of government officials and evaluations in general. And this includes formal training, but also mentoring, peer exchange and technical assistance that is embedded in daily planning and performance management processes. And I think Twende Mbele plays a very key role in terms of this with the peer-to-peer learning and exchanges that they facilitate amongst different government institutions and institutions in general. And these would lead to some guidelines and practical tools of how to incorporate this within the institutions. And I think also with the launch of the regional edition of the International Program for Development Evaluation Training in Nairobi this year, which is a world-class training brought to African evaluators. This builds a strong group of skilled evaluators across the continent. And CLEAR AA also is engaged in a number of capacity building initiatives in various countries. I mean, today, a team is in Tanzania, also training officials from the Tanzanian government. I also wanted to make a point around the young and emerging evaluators who have a huge role to play in the sustainability of the monitoring and evaluation profession. And so creating opportunities for them is very crucial. Young people bring new ideas, digital skills, and a long-term commitment to the field, and they must be given access to platforms, to assignments, and policy spaces to influence the system. And we've seen that in certain areas, this work is being done. We recently were in Uganda working with the Ugandan Evaluation Association, for example, who is looking into the young and emerging evaluators program and looking at ways of improving it, understanding how it's working and looking at ways of improving it and being able to include young and emerging evaluators within the assignments and policy spaces. And we've seen that including them in these platforms does work indeed. This is evidence of what is happening with the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association, where young and emerging evaluators were involved in mapping indicators that look at issues of equity and climate and ecosystems health, for example, and they were able to contribute in how this can be incorporated in planning processes, and I think that worked out well. So we cannot talk also about strengthening national evaluation systems without acknowledging the rise of artificial intelligence, which has a potential to improve data analysis and automate routine tasks and make evaluations faster. However, it also raises real concerns, especially for us in Africa, when users overuse AI over human intellect. And we are also seeing a wave of AI-driven tools shaped by norms, languages, and priorities that are from outside of Africa. And if we are not careful, these tools will reinforce exclusion rather than reduce it. And there's a risk that we begin valuing what's easy to measure rather than what matters in our context. And this is where our advocacy around Made in Africa evaluation becomes critical. We must protect and promote Afrocentric approaches that are grounded in our history, in our cultures and development realities. So AI must be adapted, but not adopted wholesale. If not, we risk widening the gap, especially where we are still grappling with issues of inequality, of digital access, and historical marginalization. Another, and this is my last point, another important area is the issue of use of evaluations for foresight and long-term planning. We're seeing more governments using scenario planning to shape policy directions. For example, again, in the South Africans, Indlulamiti scenarios, for example, which map possible futures for the country based on societal trends. So evaluations must evolve to support this kind of future-facing planning. Instead of only asking what happened, we need to ask what might happen. And evaluations can bring valuable evidence to foresight exercises and helping us test assumptions and assess early signs of change and also prepare more resilient policies. And this is where evaluations becomes not just backward looking, but forward looking, shaping how we govern in uncertain times. And from the work that we've done as CLEAR, we've seen that successful evaluation systems share three things. The first being strong government leadership and ownership. So when evaluation is government-led and context-driven, it's more likely to be used. Secondly, co-creation and partnerships model work quite effectively. So working with ministries to co-develop the policies, to co-develop the tools, the guidelines, and ensure, doing that ensures that there's relevance and sustainability. And lastly, around making evaluations useful and usable, when policymakers see how evaluations have led to better budgeting or program design or redesign, they begin to demand it more consistently. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you today. I'll hand over to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Sekiso, for your insight. Very much appreciated. We will be coming back to you. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I would like to now give the microphone to Dr. Jean Providence from WFP. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Soraya. This is a great opportunity actually for us to discuss as professional evaluators what is happening in this space, what is going to happen in this space. My intervention here is looking at the role of evaluation in transforming public policies related to food security. We all know most of the time whenever we are talking about policy, even our first panelist mentioned the policy, evaluation policy in his home country. And our second panelist has also mentioned evaluation as a strategic tool. But whenever we talk about policy, you hear people saying, oh, it is our policy to do X, Y, Z. I cannot change this because it is the government policy. Some other people will tell you the provision of the policy has changed. So the policy has changed. Why change or transform public policies related to food security? Number one, we have to acknowledge that policies are dynamic, not static. That's why they have to be updated so that they are responding to the current needs of the communities of the country. And when we say policies here, we have to know that it is multiple choices or a single choice made out of many other choices, sometimes competing choices. It is therefore, if people are making choices out of many other choices for the course of actions, what is the motivation? There is a reason behind. That reason mainly, it is the evidence they have. Why? To have that policy, because they have specific issues to address, like food insecurity. What is that policy to be about? How is that policy going to be formulated? Who is involved? Who is targeted by that policy? When and where? Looking at this, actually, we appreciate the fact that all these 5W questions, they are interconnected, forming a policy triangle about the content of the policy, the process, and the context. And in the middle of that policy triangle, we have got actors. And there are multiple questions actually around these triangle components. And most of the answers, we have them from evaluation. That's why I'm saying today, evaluation is an instrument for learning to transform policies, to inform policy reforms. It is therefore important for us to know that when a policy is in place, it has got a target. It has got the problem to sort out. In the African context, for example, where food insecurity is shaped by multiple socioeconomic, governance and environmental factors, evaluation is instrumental for us to know what to do in order to not make mistakes. Yes, mistakes can be made while learning how to do better. And I'm looking at evaluation as a lever of innovation and transformation, because in Southern Africa, for example, there are floods and droughts, and they come and go. They are recurrent. To some extent, they are predictable. And some of the evidence we have actually point to the fact that to address food insecurity, communities should actually engage into crop irrigation. But how can they do crop irrigation when they don't have water? Evidence shows that they can have use solar-powered irrigation. But how can they get solar-powered panel kits? In some contexts, we have to acknowledge this. It is tough to import solar panels. Why? Because there is no provision. And because there is no provision, we need actually to look into that and find mechanisms of addressing the supporting communities and citizens to import so that they can do that irrigation. Evidence we have, for example, has indicated that homegrown school feeding is capacitating smallholder farmers. And do we have, for example, a policy connecting the Ministry of Education, Health, Trade, Agriculture? That's the essence of actually having evidence from evaluation to point to which segments of the government ministries should work together to come up with that kind of policy. And we have seen actually evaluation as a mirror of cultural relevance of policies and food security interventions. Because we know, and here I actually commend the efforts by AFREA invested in championing indigenous knowledge and methods, whereby we have to acknowledge as well traditional farming methods, because some of the traditional farming methods are resilient to the weather we are facing. Lastly, we know, as I said, droughts and floods are predictable. And evidence has actually pointed out that we have to invest in anticipatory action because it saves money, it saves time, and it saves lives. And evidence shows for a single dollar spent in anticipatory action, you save $7 in losses because the communities are better prepared for predictable food crisis. Over for you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jean-Providence, for your insights. Very much appreciated. So let's continue with our last panelist, Dr. Awuor Ponge from AFREA, by the way. So the floor is yours.
Good. So thanks so much, everyone. My presentation is going to be on innovating for impact and how AFREA drives methodological adaptation to tackle Africa's pressing challenges. As has been mentioned to you, I'm the Vice President of the African Evaluation Association, and I'm standing in for my president, who is presently in Colombo, Sri Lanka, for the Summit of the Future of Evaluation. Next slide. Next slide. Right. I'd just like to request the previous slide. I'd like to request that we have a 1 minute minute of silence in honor of one of our greatest sons who just departed yesterday. He is one of the founding fathers of the decolonization debate in Africa, alongside great statesmen like Julius Kabarage Nyerere of Tanzania, Leopold Sedar Senghor of Senegal, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria, and also alongside other academics and philosophers like Kwasi Wiredu of Ghana, Sheikh Anta Diop of Senegal, Odera Oruka of Kenya, and our very own Professor Bagele Chilisa from the University of Botswana. So our 1 minute starts now. Thank you all. So Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o's book, Decolonizing the Mind, stands as a monumental work that has profoundly shaped the global debate on decolonization, especially in evaluation practice and development discourse, by exposing how colonial languages and epistemologies perpetuate alienation and underdevelopment among formerly colonized peoples. Through his unwavering advocacy for linguistic and cultural self-determination, Professor Ngugi challenged generations to reclaim indigenous languages and ways of knowing as the foundation for authentic self-definition, liberation, and sustainable development. Rest in peace, Professor Ngugi. Next slide. So that's what I intend to present. I'll briefly talk about the Afraya's mission and role, the current challenges facing Afraya and the need for innovation, the methodological innovations that are championing change in Africa. I will mention about the African evaluation principles, the Made in Africa evaluation approach, and lastly, Afraya's impact and the path forward. Next. In terms of Afraya's mission and role, Afraya was founded in the year 1999 as a continental network for evaluation professionals. It advocates for information sharing, capacity building, and standardization of evaluation practices. It also supports African ownership and leadership in evaluation practice, and also supporting national and regional VOPEs. VOPEs are the voluntary organizations for professional evaluation. Our headquarters is in Accra, Ghana, and we will be celebrating soon our Silver Jubilee between the 16th and 18th of June in Addis Ababa. Next slide. Yes, so in mentioning some of the current challenges that are facing Africa, we realize that there are challenges like poverty and inequality, issues of climate change, sustainable agriculture, and social inclusion. And we are aware that traditional evaluation methods are often Eurocentric and lacking contextual relevance. So in this particular case, there's a need for methodologies that reflect Africa's unique priorities, cultures, and knowledge systems. In the picture there, you can see our president recently, Dr. Miche Udrago. He was launching the INCHE project, which is a partnership between Afraya, the World Food Program, and DIEVAL of Germany. And the INCHE project, which was launched recently, is a transformative initiative which is designed to strengthen national evaluation systems and promote evidence-based policymaking across Africa by providing countries with a robust tool to assess, to improve, and institutionalize their evaluation capacities for sustainable development. Next slide. Some of the methodological innovations that are championing change in Africa are, for example, the emphasis on Afrocentric and participatory approaches. We have the integration of indigenous knowledge with, with international best practices. Then there's the emerging use of technology, for example, the mobile phones for mobile surveys, big data, and the like. And lastly, we are trying to balance tech-driven efficiency with participatory human-centered methods. If you look at the pictures there, the first picture is on our 11th International Evaluation Conference, where our topic was on technology and innovation in evaluation practice. Recently, we had a webinar where we were talking about some of the technological, the innovations that we have at Afrea, as well as also the technological innovations that are emerging globally and which Afrea or Africa should try to domesticate to the African context. So we say that as much as Afrea innovative approaches are Eurocentric, they are also open. That means that evaluations engage with issues that matter in Africa and consider African framings and methods. So Afrea is championing these innovative Afrocentric evaluation methods by integrating, for example, indigenous knowledge, participatory approaches, and technology with international best practices to create culturally relevant and effective solutions for Africa's diverse challenges. Next slide. One of our flagship projects in terms of methodological innovation at Afrea is the development and adoption of the African evaluation principles. These African evaluation principles are grounded on 5 key principles. 1 is on empowerment of the African people. 2, technological robustness. 3, ethical soundness. 4, Africa-centric approaches. And 5, global connectedness. So the implementation of these principles guide adaptation to Africa's context and priorities. For example, we are talking about the Africa Union Agenda 2063 and also the domestication of the Sustainable Development Goals. So you'll realize that in our upcoming anniversary celebrations, one of the objectives is on building partnerships for the attainment of Africa Union's Agenda 2063. And we want to strike a working relationship with the Africa Union so that Afrea and the African continent as a whole can come together in making the AU realize this Agenda 2063 through evidence-informed decision-making. Next slide. So for the Made in Africa evaluation, the first critical thing we're talking about decolonization and indigenization, where we are centering on decolonizing evaluation by challenging the dominance of Western approaches and prioritizing African knowledge, values, and worldviews. There's also the element of context specificity and cultural relevance, and then aligning with the Afrea standards and empowerment. That's the African evaluation principles that we just talked about briefly. So the Made in Africa evaluation approach is rooted in the philosophy of Ubuntu, and this guides the blending of methods by emphasizing on the following 3 key issues. 1, relationality, in which case Knowledge is co-created through relationships within communities and recognizing both the living and the non-living elements. Two, there's the element of responsibility and reciprocity, where evaluators have a duty to support positive transformations and to ensure that evaluations are mutually beneficial. And the third element is on respect, reflexivity, and decolonization. And that's why you are celebrating one of our greatest sons, who is one of the founding fathers of the decolonization debate in Africa. Click. Yes, so that picture shows our recent webinar on the Made in Africa evaluation, and you can see some of the greatest brains on Made in Africa evaluation presently. The webinar was moderated by our president, Dr. Miche. We had Professor Bagele Chilisa, Dr. Mazigo, and Dr. I can't see the face clearly. Dr. Okwen, Patrick Okwen, yes, from Cameroon. So we are working on the Made in Africa evaluation handbook. This is a brainchild of our president, Dr. Miche, as well as a curriculum that is being worked on through the MasterCard Foundation project with the University of Botswana. So click. That one is just removing the cat from the bag early enough, but that's what you are supposed, one of the things you're supposed to expect as one of our deliverables in Addis when we are celebrating Afrea at 25. Next slide. So in terms of Afrea's impact and the pathway forward, we are talking about integration of indigenous knowledge into evaluation practices. And the key elements here we are talking about are one, promoting the Made in Africa evaluation approach. And in this, we are talking about these Ubuntu-inspired frameworks as well as participatory methods like using storytelling, ethnography, and community-led dialogues. Then the second key point is on adapting the African evaluation principles. It is adopting and adapting as well as trying to get buy-in from the evaluation commissioners on the use of these African evaluation principles. And as we have mentioned before, they are Africa-centric. They give priorities of African context, as well as helping us in the realization of the Agenda 2063. And also, it is very important to note that we are trying to balance technical rigor with cultural relevance. So cultural specificity and relevance is key in the the African evaluation principles. The third point is championing transformative mixed methods approaches. And here we are talking about combining indigenous and Western knowledge, as well as using technology in an inclusive manner. For example, we can use mobile surveys and big data, and these are paired with oral histories or communal labor practices to enhance reach as well as legitimacy. And lastly, we are emphasizing on building capacity for indigenous evaluation practices. And through this, Afrea has been at the forefront in the creation of South-South knowledge hubs. These are fostering South-South cooperation and partnerships for knowledge exchange, as well as facilitating exchanges between African evaluators to share best practices and leveraging indigenous knowledge systems. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we are inviting you all. It's an invite-only event, which will be held in Addis Ababa on 16th to 18th of June. Afrea will be celebrating its Silver Jubilee under the theme celebrating 25 years of excellence in Africa-rooted evaluation, building a stronger future together. So join us in Addis and let us help take Afrea to the next level and help the African Union realize our Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Awuor. Thank you very much to you and to all panelists. And it was really great to hear from your experience and unique insights. So now we are going to start the Q&A session. And I would like to open the floor to the participant who would like, to raise, any questions, comments. So please, I don't have, I'm not looking, I would like Megan help maybe, but, and if, raise your hand, of course, and please feel free to ask your questions. Thank you.
So we have some questions in the Q&A box, or anyone who has a question, they can raise their hand,
Yes,
and I can allow them to speak, to come in and speak.
Yeah, you're right. So if we don't see any hand raise, maybe we can start by looking at the chat, because we see a long list of comments, but also some very interesting questions. And so one category of question maybe that I would like to start asking, and while we're waiting that colleagues, maybe the participant can raise their hand, is the very important question of the institutionalization of evaluation. And in Africa, so colleagues ask, some participants are asking, much more details on to learn much more about, the experience from the Benin in terms of institutionalization, or what, share about the experience and what are the maybe context specific, I would say, factors and parameters that played, in this particular. So maybe I would like maybe to ask a panelist, starting by le ministre Antonin Dossou, revenir un peu sur les facteurs qui ont permis, qui expliquent un peu l'institutionnalisation et les schémas
And the patterns traveled,
notamment au niveau du Bénin. Voilà.
particularly at the level of Benin. That's it. I'd like to start with you. Thank you.
Merci pour
Thank you for the
la
request for
précision.
clarification.
Vous devez
You can guess
bien
that.
que le délai
The time limit did not allow for detail.
d'aller dans le
What should be noted?
Ce qu'il faut noter,
This is the strong initial political will.
volonté politique.
That's what allowed the
Je pense que c'est ça qui a permis au Bénin de
It's up to Benin to take this qualitative step in fact.
qualitatif, en fait. C'est le président
That of the
de la
President of the Republic at the time, Dr. Thomas Boni, who, expressly,
qui expresse
joined the evaluation function, public
a
policy,
joint la fonction d'évaluation des politiques publiques
in the Ministry of Development, and therefore of Foresight and Development. And it took two. We had to
Et il a
create.
fallu,
And in doing so, he has left his hand
il a laissé
to the operational people that we were.
aux opérationnels que nous étions. Et je dois
And I must
avouer
admit that it has
que
made significant
ça a permis
progress.
d'avancer de façon significative.
And so the first thing we did,
La première
it is an
chose qu'on
inventory
doit faire,
study.
c'est une étude d'état des lieux. Et je vous assure, nous n'avions
And I assure you,
pas
we didn't even
la
have the human capacity on site to do it.
Et on a dû,
And we had to, we called on external consultants who helped us a lot, who have made the inventory, then we
qui ont établi les forces, les faiblesses,
established strengths, weaknesses, and in particular avenues for management and improvement. And once
une fois
that it was taken care of, so the Office for the Evaluation of Public Policies was created.
créé,
We had to build a
il a
critical
fallu
mass
constituer une masse
From
critique de
of practitioners, I would say of the evaluation. At the same time,
en même temps mettre en place le cadre institutionnel en identifiant tous les acteurs intervenants
To set
dans le
up
système. Donc, on
the
a eu un cadre
institutional framework
institutionnel
by
et
identifying all evaluation of public.
on a par exemple eu d'excellentes relations avec l'Assemblée
For
nationale.
example, we have excellent relations with the National Assembly,
A dans sa mission le contrôle de l'action gouvernementale.
who, by definition, AAA in its mission,
On a mobilisé
civil society
les
actors,
acteurs de la
and there
société
were.
civile. Il y avait, je prends un exemple simple, hein, mais il n'y avait pas que, il y avait par exemple
I'll
Sociologue
take a simple example,
qui est
but there wasn't, for example,
de la
Social Watch,
société civile
for example,
et qui
which is a
s'attachait
group of
chaque
civil
année
society organizations that were
à
tainted
suivre
every
la
year.
mise en œuvre du
A
budget
police
et son
officer,
impact
the implementation of the budget and its
sur la
impact on the population.
Et puis, nous avons arrêté un programme d'évaluation. Donc, nous avons conduit
And then we decided
un
on an
certain nombre
evaluation
d'évaluations
program.
pour
So we conducted a
montrer
number of
dans la
evaluations to show in practice
ce que
what
cela
it could
pouvait
be. We have to be
Il
honest,
faut être
it wasn't
honnête,
easy.
ça n'a pas été
It
facile.
wasn't easy because at the
Ça n'a
beginning,
pas été facile puisqu'au début, il y a eu beaucoup de
there was a lot of resistance, a lot of reluctance.
réticence. Euh,
Many considered that they wanted to judge her.
Beaucoup considéraient qu'on voulait les juger. Beaucoup considéraient que on voulait
Many
montrer
considered that we
leurs
wanted to
failles.
show their flaws, and
Donc,
so there was no one at the beginning. Membership
il n'y a pas eu au départ l'adhésion souhaitée, mais une fois que par pédagogie,
wished,
avec les instances d'évaluation,
but once by
sont tenues,
pedagogy,
une fois qu'on a
with the
réussi à
evaluation
faire
bodies are held,
l'utilité
once we have succeeded in showing the
des
usefulness of the evaluation,
évaluations, une fois qu'on a
because that is
établi
above
les
all the
rapports et
usefulness
qu'on a
of
pu
evaluation.
disséminer
Once we have established the reports and we have been able to disseminate them, first of all, to the first actors, gradually, it evolved.
et on a pu déboucher
And in 2012, we were able to draw up the national evaluation policy.
Et comme je l'ai dit en 2024, là c'est vraiment
And as I said in 2024, now it's really legalized.
l'évaluation est légalisée au Bénin de façon
Now the practice of evaluation is legalized in Benin in a systematic way. So to sum up, the initial political will was decisive. After that, we had
Nous avons eu des coopérations significatives.
significant cooperation. There is a Holmblay, for example,
De prendre l'expérience en Afrique du Sud,
which has allowed us to take the experience in South Africa and Uganda and to pool them. Often, I can't help but mention UNICEF. Who has us?
qui nous a accompagnés, le
Who has accompanied us? The TNU who has accompanied us. We had
d'excellentes, je dirais des va-et-vient avec 3 IE, par exemple.
I would say back and forth with 3 eyes, for example.
Et ça s'est matérialisé, je me dois de le dire.
So it was really interesting and it materialized, and I must say it, through the Beninese days of evaluation. By the Beninese days of evaluation.
Nous réunissions tous les acteurs de l'évaluation.
Every 2 years, we bring together all the actors of the evaluation around interesting themes. It really allowed us to learn very quickly.
L'ensemble des partenaires de l'évaluation.
From all the partners of the evaluation at the global level. I thought I saw my friend Jan Upgrit for a while, who is connected. Well, that's how we met Jan, and that this relationship has been going on for a long time. There was another Jan. I don't think he's there, from South Africa. There you go, at some point. It was the series, by the way. Thank you. I doubt that Dinan too. There's Jan next door. In short, this is the evaluation. We are helping Benin to evolve significantly through this partnership. And I take this opportunity to salute the action of the AFEA as well, who we worked with, and wish them happy birthday in anticipation. Thank you very much, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to honestly listen to you for this rich experience, which is quite characteristic of when you are lucky enough to have the favorable institutional environment. You can move forward very quickly in the field of evaluation. So the most important question, which is really the commitment of the government, which is important, and especially the environment with society as well, both civil society and therefore parliament. you have so well pointed out, is very important. I would like us to continue to see if there are any raised hands on the following issues, particularly in connection with the question of equity. So I'd like to. Victor asked the question. I hope Victor is still with us.
How can evaluation frameworks be adapted to address persistent inequalities? And I think this is very, very important question, because as I was presenting, and the question for us is, to what extent I think we can speed up the process of the development in Africa, and going beyond the economic growth, but ensuring that economic growth is translated into concrete and meaningful change in the life of its citizen. So maybe I would like to give the floor, for instance, to the panelists who would like to jump into this question to answer. Any maybe
Yeah.
Dr. Yeah, go ahead.
Towards this particular question, to this question. So, I mean, earlier on when I was presenting, I did make a mention of some innovations within Africa that have been made in terms of how to incorporate issues of equity within evaluations. And there has been a criteria that has been developed in South Africa. It's called transformative equity criteria. And this criteria is basically saying that when you're doing your evaluations, you should be incorporating the equity dimensions from your TOR stage. And it's saying that you should be asking questions around who benefits and who loses and who is included and who is excluded in that particular program that you are evaluating. But also looking at issues of how does inequity play out and how the intervention is responding to inequity, and also take into account issues of geographical and spatial factors. So how do the geographical and spatial factors within the intervention itself, how do they affect inequities, or how do they sort of impact the persistence of inequities within that space? So I think using such criteria, and there is a guideline that has been developed for that, using that criteria and incorporating it into your evaluation and asking questions that set to answer these dimensions around who benefits, the spatial issues, the timing issues of the intervention itself, also helps in terms of ensuring that when you are doing evaluations, you are then generating evidence that also speaks to equity, but also, getting a sense of how or what recommendations could be put in place for the interventions that also speak to the situation around equity within your area of intervention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insight and response. So I would like to see if, Megan, there is anyone who want to jump in. We would like to hear from participants. If not, we are seeing as well very, very great question. So if not, I would like to continue maybe by the question from Jan, and acknowledging the great presentation and asking to what extent some the presenters, they can give advice on the contribution. Yes. Oui, monsieur le ministre. Allez-y. Bon, peut-être je demanderai un peu. Allez-y.
Toutes mes excuses, mais je voudrais revenir.
I would like to come back. I don't want to mobilize the floor, okay? Experience of Benin to come back to this issue of the treatment of inequalities. What I want to say is that the definition, the development of public policy at the outset is essential. There are public policies put in place to solve a given problem. Therefore, the problem must already be identified, and that the policy is built to solve the problem. So move from point A to point B. And earlier, I said that for me, evaluation is a strategic tool, because it allows you to be ensured that we have arrived at point B, yes or so, that we didn't get there entirely.
Ou alors qu'on n'y est pas arrivé entièrement et on essaye de comprendre pourquoi.
And we are trying to understand why and if it is an evaluation that is done midterm.
Mi-parcours, elle offre l'opportunité de rectifier
It offers the opportunity to rectify the situation, to find the appropriate actions to achieve the objective. So we have to already.
que dans la
That in the definition of policy, the question of how to deal with inequalities should be taken into account. And this is where the evaluation will help, by checking that the objectives are achieved and when.
Et quand je prends l'exemple de la définition de, là, je peux
From the definition of there I can
une expérience concrète.
I can share a concrete experience. So the Vision Benin 2025 to the AFIA predicts that by 2025, the Benin will be a flagship country, to govern well to a prosperous economy of international cultural influence then. Said in this way, there are objectives that are assigned, and in particular, a significant reduction in poverty. So when we wanted to conduct the evaluation, we said, we must start from similar indicators, precise. And we have for that, took the Human Development Index of NUT. And we can see that in 2000, Benin was at a given level. 2023, since we did an evaluation in 2023, there has been progress. But in terms of, in 2000, Benin was ranked 153rd. Among the 189 countries evaluated, for which the indicator is available, and in 2023, Benin, 163rd. And so when we presented the results, people have told us, well, listen, Ben, how can you say that? We have made progress, we have a growth rate of 6%, etc., etc., etc. Yes, so you can't say we didn't work. It was at that time simple, based on evidence. It was easy to say yes, but the objectives in terms of poverty reduction, the objectives in terms of the fight against it. Yes, 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 of the fight against the situation of poverty, these objectives have not been fully achieved. And so we can say that there is progress, but we can't say that we've arrived. We can't say that we're efficient, and therefore in terms of efficiency we can't. So there you have it, thank you. That's the example I wanted to set. Give. It's a great example. 1. It's an excellent example, and it brings us back to the why and the importance of evaluations to make things happen in Africa and to make it possible to face the challenges and therefore to ensure that progress can finally be made. Maybe, I mean, progress that can be seen and that also benefits the population. But I was talking earlier. Remember at the level of the introduction of some statistics and some data that actually show the challenges that we still have to face.
Maybe because as time is flying, I would like to continue, maybe ask one of the great questions from participants, and the one that maybe this time too. And please, dear panelists, can you please respond in a concise manner, very brief, because we are lagging, and you will be having 2 minutes at the end, just to wrap up. So one of the questions is, what will be the advice that you can give on the contribution of the VOPs? And are we fit for purpose? Are we fit for purpose for the challenges? This is a very, very important question from Jan Hoopwood. So maybe I would like to ask this question and I would really appreciate if Dr. Awuor can respond in a very concise way, and I will also let the floor to Clear as well. Thank you so much, if needed. Otherwise, we continue. Thank you. Dr. Awuor, in a concise manner, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Soraya, for that. the first question is from Professor Ian. What advice on the contribution of VOPES? Are we fit for purpose? I think the contribution of VOPES is really key, and this is one of the issues I wanted to address when Kume Alfred asked about how can we make African governments to involve monitoring and evaluation experts and practices in their development programs. And my response to these two nearly similar questions is that the African governments need to work closely with the voluntary organizations for professional evaluations, as well as with the academia to help them in the development of their national evaluation policies. We've seen examples where VOPES have worked very well with the government, and these have led to the development of national evaluation policies. For example, we have the case of Uganda, which is a shining example. We have Nigeria, which recently developed their national evaluation policy. We have the case of Benin, which the minister has articulated so well, and also the case of South Africa. What is important to note about these four countries is that there is a big element of the involvement with the Clear AA, especially through their Twendembele program. So the role of VOPES is critical in working closely with the government. And that's why whenever AFREA holds our international conferences, we make sure that we have to bring the national VOPE closely with the national government so that we work together in the coordination of the international conference. An example is even right now when you're preparing for our celebration in Addis. We are working closely with the Ethiopian Evaluation Association and the national government in Ethiopia. Good. The second question was from Killian, and Killian was asking about what is AFREA doing to standardize and certify evaluators? What I can say here in terms of standardization and certification of evaluators is that AFREA is working closely with other global bodies like the International Development Evaluation Association, IDEAS, and also the International Organization for Cooperation in Evaluation, that is the IOCE, in developing professional standards and how we can make sure that our practicing evaluators are in a way certified. So far, we have been learning from other established VOPES like the Canadian Evaluation Society, and I'm happy to report that we have quite a bunch of us who are certified evaluators bearing the title CE from Canada, and we would like to learn something, along that line to also certify our evaluators. We have developed the African School of Evaluation, and this will be launched officially around October, November this year. So that's also one way in which AFREA is working towards that. We are grateful to the GEI and the World Bank that they have finally decided to see the need to bring IPRET, the International Program for Development Evaluation Training in Africa. We will have a session in Morocco targeting the Francophone Africa, and we have another session in Nairobi targeting the Anglophone Africa. Then we also have the capacity building work that has been spearheaded by the Clear AA and Clear FA, which are also appreciated as Africa journey towards standardization and certification of evaluators. Lastly, the last question is from Pascal Edeseu, who is asking, how does Africa promote the practical use of impact assessment in public policy development? And my response to this is that I already mentioned to you in my presentation about the INSEP project that was recently launched by our president and which is coordinated jointly with the World Food Program and the DEVAL of Germany. And this INSEP project is actually designed to strengthen national evaluation systems and also promote evidence-based decision-making across Africa. So this is really key. on how AFREA is working to promote the practical use of impact assessment.
Thank you,
And
Dr.
what prospects do you see in sub-Saharan Africa? I can say that the future is very bright for evaluation in sub-Saharan Africa, and we've been getting buy-in from the highest level of policy makers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Awuor. It's very useful. So I think now we are going to reach, the end of the session. So I would like now to ask you to try to address one question that is seems to me very important to all of you before closing our session. So the question is the following: we understood that, of course, evaluation is a strategic tool, a lever, for more responsible development planning. So I would like to hear from you in your closing, in your last words, to what extent, based on your experience, what the evaluation that we are doing are really utilized to really ensure, an influence. So what are your advice and based on your maybe experience on to what extent we can make sure that evaluation findings are effectively influencing the development planning, and most importantly, I would say the budgeting, because if we need to tackle the disparities and inequalities, we need, to act not only in the development planning, but most importantly in the cycle of budget. So in 1 minute, I would like to give you the floor for everyone of our esteemed panelists. I will start with Dr. Jean Providence. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would say evaluation is a strategic asset, and we can't do without it. And it is very important, for example, when it comes to advancing food security and policy effectiveness, to look at the evaluation as an institutional tool which has to be owned not only by policymakers, but also those who are on the receiving end. That would mean investment in evaluation capacity at all levels, so that when you talk about participatory evaluations, then the communities are aware what is expected when they are participating in evaluations, so that they are able to hold onto accounts those who are conducting whether evaluations or implementing interventions. So it's a critical tool. Let's go ahead using evaluation. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Jean-François. Jean Providence, merci pour votre réponse succincte. Alors, I would like to give the floor to maybe Monsieur le Ministre, et ensuite maybe colleagues from CLEAR. Thank you. In 1 minute, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I think, we need to not forget that evaluations, we need to see them as being part of the program or policy cycle. So we should be using the evidence from evaluations to inform design of these programs, but also developing theories of change that are informed. So seeing it as a part of the program cycle and not something outside of the program.
Thank you very much. So maybe can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sarah. I think Sneh dropped out.
We lost, I think we lost. Okay. So thank you. Now I would like to maybe give the floor either to Monsieur le Ministre Antonin Dossou or to Dr. Awuor for their last words in 1 minute, please, before closing. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much, Soraya. I'll go first. I think what I need to mention here is that there is need for self-assessment. This is very key. in terms of making sure that our evaluation influences policy and development planning. And by this, I mean that we need to adhere to international standards and commitments. For example, commitments to the AU Agenda 2063, as well as commitment to to the Sustainable Development Goals, and the need for regular national-based evaluation assessments. And last but certainly not the least, I think there's a best practice that was initiated in Kenya, working closely with the National VOPE in Kenya. The government of Kenya has been organizing the National Evaluation Week, and this is a best practice that has been copied by Uganda and Tanzania, and they are perfecting it. And we were happy to see Sri Lanka also send one of their own to come and benchmark in Kenya on the working of the National Evaluation Week. So evaluation practitioners come to this and share best practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for you. So the last but not least, Monsieur Dossou.
Merci bien. Je partage les éléments apportés par mes prédécesseurs. Je voudrais juste ajouter deux choses. La première chose, la persévérance et la patience. La persévérance.
Perseverance and patience when I see where we started in 2007. And I see where we have arrived today, now, 15 years later. I think it's important to be part of the trajectory, and all countries, whatever their level of development and evaluation, should be part of this trajectory. Second thing, cooperation, cooperation, cooperation. Together, we are stronger. This allows us to see what is finally good, to identify good practices, and to see how they are implemented in your own system. My predecessor spoke about the National Evaluation Week in Kenya. In my speech, I spoke about the Beninese Evaluation Days. It really allows us to open up the horizon and to be inspired by major practices everywhere else. And I am convinced that this is how our gagnols go. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for these words, which are still very important. Takes the idea of perseverance because, at the end of the day, evaluation is a strategic tool. We all understand that. A tool that makes it possible to improve public policies in Africa to be able to face the challenges, and well, therefore build on the progress we talked about at the very beginning. So you need perseverance, you also need an environment. Institutional that we are favorable, and this favorable institutional environment has been built over time with a set of actors, which are very important, all as much as they are at the same time. The government, therefore, plays a leading role, which must be committed from the outset, which must therefore be able to build, let's say, the favorable environment, civil society, and therefore, and in particular therefore with all the bookies, and therefore with Africa, as well as all the actors in the world of development that accompanies the question of evaluation. I think that also evaluation, as we have all said, also the importance of, in order to be able to do so, act, be able to do, for it to act on development, to be able to contribute to a much more inclusive development. It also really needs to be useful, and we need to be able to communicate more about the results of the evaluations, because that's what it is. It will remain a science where we will say the obvious that remains somewhere, and which are sometimes also led by the community, let's say, donors. So, the evaluation, with the efforts that are being made at the level of Africa in particular, with of course the efforts in the Made in Africa evaluation, the efforts to be able to take into account the endogenous elements, the cultures, and the aspects, much more endogenous knowledge, So all this contributes of course to the main objective of being able to use evaluation as a lever. And so all of us as participants and the evaluation community, I think that it is more necessary than ever in Africa to be able to take advantage of evaluations, to be able to use them in the field, therefore, to be able to learn, to draw the lessons learned and above all also to be able to include this. And like this one, in the field of policy, in the cycle of planning, programming and budgeting. So it's really very important aspects. The characters, so the importance that was also highlighted to have mechanisms or platforms of collaboration, of South-South exchange. Cooperation is important overall. Which is important? Mechanisms, in particular, for example, the Instability platform. For example, discussed, I was lucky enough to be able to observe. So begin. Such a platform can be a platform for exchange. Therefore beyond the barriers of French-speaking or English-speaking Africa, rather of Africa as a whole, where everyone is together and we can see what are the good practices or best practices of certain countries. And that can inspire others. So I would like to thank you for all your questions and I wish you a great week that will soon start from the Glocal to all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.